We knew all along, a Hummer is not for everyone.
Now you're wondering, why am I so happy, right? Well, let me tell you why. Because of this.
Hey folks, welcome back to another vlog. Ryan Wilson here from Predator Inc. And today I got another story for you. A lot of feedback, appreciate that very much from our last story. You asked for more stories. We've been in business for 22 years, so we've seen a lot of stuff. This one's pretty cool because it's definitely an iconic story. It involves how the Humvee came to market as a Hummer and was released into the civilian population. There's a lot of rumors as far as how it happened, what happened, and how it all went down. However, this is from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Information that I got directly from the person who brought it to market. Getting into the story, we get this phone call from a gentleman, this is back in 2010. And he said, hey, I am the personal assistant for Arnold Schwarzenegger. And at that time, it was Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Shout out to Governor Schwarzenegger at the time. Did an awesome job here in California. Definitely proud that you were our governor for those years. So appreciate what you did. Thank you, sir. Now, get this call, and he says, hey, I've got this truck. I want to bring it down. It's one of Governor Schwarzenegger's trucks. And somebody tried to convert it into a biodiesel truck. It's got some issues. Can you guys fix it? I said, yeah, no problem. I actually have a good friend of mine, Sam, one of the best guys out there with SVO kits and biodiesel stuff. So let me call him, have him come on out, link up together. Sam coordinates a lot of the back and forth with Schwarzenegger's team. We get the truck down here and we start going through. We do a bunch of repairs. Sam flies in and we go through the truck, fix up his truck, and get this veggie oil system fully operating in it. Put in new biodiesel grade fuel lines. And at that time, there were very few companies, manufacturers that offered anything that was biodiesel related. So it was definitely difficult to come by. And then we utilized Sam Moss's kit when he developed a system where it actually preheats the veggie oil before it gets injected into the truck, and then it purges the system out so it's running on diesel before it shuts down. So really cool system and definitely environmentally friendly, as Arnold is. The cool thing about it is you could technically pull up at like a McDonald's and grab their waste oil, and it had a series of filters in place and would filter out all of that the French fries and then go through the system. Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced veggie oil or waste veggie oil, but the stuff smells amazing. Most of the biodiesel kind of smells like popcorn, and some of the waste vegetable oil will actually smell like that shop. So we utilized some French fry oil and it smelled like French fries, which was pretty cool. And then we went through the whole truck, made sure it's 100% mechanically ready to go, and then released the truck to them. Now, one of the unique things about this truck was at the time, there were no Humvees released. I mean, there are a couple out there that were illegally released through the government. It went to this government contractor and he released them. He wasn't supposed to. AM General shut that down pretty quick. However, this one was the first and only Humvee that was ever released from AM General directly to a civilian, which was Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Before we give him his keys and he motors out of the plant, please join me once again in acknowledging Arnold and Ken. Give them a big welcome.
And then we got this call from his personal assistant and said, hey, Governor Schwarzenegger would like to fly down and visit with you, get a tour of your shop, kind of meet your team and see his truck. Is that okay? Yeah, of course, it'd be awesome to have him down. I said, okay, well, let's coordinate it. We'll let you know when it's gonna happen, but this is between you and I. Don't tell anybody, don't tell your team. Nobody can know about this because he is the governor of California and we need to have protective services involved and make sure it's safe for him. So yeah, no problem. I won't tell anybody. I didn't tell my wife, I didn't tell my kids. I'm dying to tell them that, but I couldn't. I think a couple days goes by and he calls back and says, hey, he's gonna come down tomorrow and we're gonna have a team show up earlier in the morning, go through the whole shop, make sure everything's dialed. I said, great, come on down. This team shows up. We got a bunch of black Suburbans, a bunch of CHP officers from the Protective Services of California. They come in, bomb sniffing dogs going through the shop, dial the whole shop in, make sure it's 100%, and then they lock down our entire street. So one end of the street's locked down, the other end of the street's locked down, and this place is just, I mean, we had upset neighbors trying to figure out what's going on. It was pretty cool. So about an hour goes by, and you got all these guys out here in black suits, which is pretty cool. Look like Men in Black. And all of a sudden, Arnold Schwarzenegger shows up in, I think it was 3 Suburbans, black Suburbans. They pull in, and he's in one of them, all blacked out windows, and gets out, comes in. I introduce myself, meet with him. My father was there, met him. Just an awesome person, awesome individual. Comes in and said, okay, let me show you around. He said, no, I want to meet the team. I was like, of course, I appreciate that. That's awesome. Then he notices out of the corner of his eye, in the back corner of the shop, there's this guy who has a broom cleaning up in the corner, and he realized that he didn't meet that person. He said, hold on, just one moment, Ryan. Walks to the back corner and says, hello, I'm Arnold, how are you doing? Shook his hand and really made that effort to just be a down-to-earth human being. So after the full tour, we went over to his truck, and he was checking out his truck. I said, yeah, this is great because this is the first and only Humvee that was ever released to a civilian, and probably will be the only one from AM General that has ever released directly to a civilian. And so he's like, this thing means a lot to me, so thank you for taking care of our truck. So hey, I understand you do these Duramax conversions, and you get a lot more power. Tell me about that. So I'm like, yeah, you get better fuel economy, and you're burning less fuel. You get a lot more power, a lot more drivability out of the truck. It's a lot faster. He said, this is great. It's wonderful. He's like, would you mind taking me for a ride in? I was like, well, better than that. Do you want to drive one? And he said, yeah, of course I'll drive one. So we hop into our Hummer and fully converted Duramax diesel truck. And he gets behind the wheel, and I look over, and he's got his protective service group, and they're all scrambling now because I kind of sense that none of that was planned. And they've got cars that are pulling out, ready to go. And so he starts up the truck. We drive out of the shop, and we're just kind of cruising along, and all of a sudden he hits it. And he hauls ass down the street. And protective service is like pulling around cars, and he's whizzing in and out of cars. And he gets out in front, and we've got like cars, like these protective services cars flanking us and behind us. And we're cruising along. And I was like, Arnold, you got to tell me the story about how the Hummer came to market. Because there's these rumors out there that you brought this vehicle to market, or at least you had some part of it coming to market for the civilian population. I said, yeah, Ryan, that's an interesting story. I saw the initial war break out in the Gulf, and I saw these vehicles, and I was like, wow, these things are amazing. He's like, I got to have one of these. He's like, I used to drive tanks, and so I've got a lot of military vehicles. I love military vehicles. And this Hummer was at the level of a Harley. This is Americana. It's this icon that America needs to have and needs to have in the civilian population. I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. I completely agree. I love the vehicle. And so he says, yeah, so I made some calls, and I made an appointment out in South Bend, Indiana, and flew out to AM General. And got in there, and I walked in, and I said, okay, great. So I want to buy one of these. How do I buy one? He said, well, sir, we can't sell you one. Yeah, you can. Just sell me one. I'll take one off your lot. I don't care how much it costs. Just, I really want to buy one. And he said, well, we can't. We have these ITAR regulations. This is a war machine. So we're not allowed to sell this vehicle to any civilian at all, ever. And he said, well, there's got to be a way around it. And the guy says, well, yeah, I guess you can get a letter signed off stating that we can from the government. So he says, how do I get this letter? And he said, well, you're going to have to go to the government and get this thing signed off, releasing liability. We got to have some type of waiver saying that we, AM General, can release this vehicle to you and to the civilian market. And he said, great, I'll go ahead and get that taken care of. And at that time, Arnold was not Governor Schwarzenegger, he was Arnold Schwarzenegger. So Arnold goes,
I'll be back.
No pun intended. And he flies over to his buddy in the government to meet with him and get this letter signed off. And a nonchalant little letter that he needs to get signed off. Again, not the governor, not a whole lot of pull, but he is Arnold friggin' Schwarzenegger. So he goes in there and he knocks on his door. He's like, hey, I need to get this letter signed off. And I'm like, whoa, Arnold, who was your buddy? He's all, oh, it's Colin Powell, Ryan. And I'm like, of course it was Colin friggin' Powell to sign off on a letter. And I was like, okay, makes sense. So he goes to Colin Powell's office and says, hey, this is great for America. It's Americana, it's this icon. We need this released to the public. So I need you to sign off on this letter. So Colin Powell goes over it, reads over it. He's like, okay, there you go. Flies back to AM General. And he's like, Ryan, this is the great part. I flew back in. I get in front of these guys and I'm like, hey, here's the letter. Now let's go pick out my Hummer. And it's like, what? And they assemble, they get all the attorneys in the office, they're looking at this letter, and they're like, how did this happen? And he's like, okay, let's go get you your Hummer. So they got up, went and picked out a Humvee, and that was the birth of the Humvee. Now, subsequently, they made some other arrangements. We didn't get into those details at all, but I know AM General brought him on and was a spokesman. He was a spokesman for the Hummer when it was released to the civilian marketplace back in 92, 93, I think into 94. So you did probably see him in some advertisements here and there driving around in his Hummer. And I know AM General gave him a Hummer each year. There's some stories about that. Again, we didn't get into those details, but really wanted to hear the story from him directly on how he brought the Humvee to the Hummer marketplace, the civilian marketplace, which is just absolutely awesome story. It was an amazing experience driving around with him. And he's telling me this story, and we're going through it, and I'm like, wow, this is such cool history and part of our culture here in this Hummer automotive world. And right about then, he starts cranking this hard left turn into oncoming traffic that's coming down here. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, oh no. And there's like 3 cop cars that pull up, block off all the traffic. And they're not, I shouldn't say cop cars, they were CHP Crown Vics all blacked out. And you can't tell that they're cop cars. And all of a sudden the whole thing's light up, the intersection lights up, cars stop, he does his U-turn, and we head back to the office. So awesome experience, phenomenal man. Came back in here, shook everybody's hands again, asked them questions, like literally went out of his way to make a point that each person here was special. And it really definitely impacted my life as far as having that experience because he was such a genuine person. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed watching this. Definitely a really cool story, and honored to have Arnold down here and experience that story firsthand from the person who helped bring it to market and bring the Hummer to market. So thank you so much, Arnold. We appreciate you very much. And until next time, thanks for watching. We'll keep the stories going. Let us know if you want to hear more of these cool stories, and we'll keep these kind of part of our regular vlog session, and see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.